Do you ever remember the boring assignments back in school? Well, in this project, we make creative, engaging alternatives. Today's assignment: pick one person from history, create a detailed presentation describing a hypothetical alternate history and how that history diverges from our own if your chosen person either lives longer or died younger. Without Michael Faraday?
Michael Faraday, yes.
I do
All right.
see it, yeah.
So, hi class. Good morning, Mr. Barth. This is United States history or world history. What is it? 9003. And today I'm going to be going over A World Without Michael Faraday. This is a teenage puberty voice, by the way. My name is Max Dubnik, and today is January 27th, 2025. All right, who is this bozo? Okay, so on our sacred timeline, Michael Faraday contributed to, basically he's considered the father of electricity. He basically discovered electromagnetic induction, discovered the changing magnetic fields, including electric currents, leading to generators and transformers. Pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. His law of induction quantified the relationship between magnetic fields changing and also basically laid the groundwork for the electric motor and the Faraday cage. So that's pretty cool, if I do say so myself. So when are we going in the timeline? So if you look over here, we have us, the sacred timeline, right? This Homo super timeline goes back like way, like 10,000 years ago, right? So, and then currently we're on this branch point where my cursor is. And now this is the world without Michael Faraday. And then you'll find out for the next presentation, this is the next presentation. So that is also a timeline. It's all within the same multiverse. Great. Okay, so a 4-year-old Michael Faraday comes down with polio and sadly passes away. No! Theories surrounding static electricity and electrolysis existed before him, but he was really the one who revolutionized and really put it into practicality. So in this new timeline, no genius mind remains to further the fields of basically electricity, and upon the 18th and 19th century arriving, theories of the application of the current electric model that we know of became lost to the history books, not even recorded briefly. I know, so sad. They didn't record history very well back then. So how different is the 1800s? The 19th century is easily the most similar century that we will look at because, we didn't deviate that much from the timeline yet. Communication moved at a much slower rate in the sense that the telegraph was never invented. And so it was similar to where you would deliver letters on horseback, trains whenever those were eventually developed. But basically, we never got instant communication, similar how you were able to have those telegraph wires across the country. The abolitionist movement didn't have a wide amount of success due to a slightly slower level of communication, especially in the more developed North in America until the 1880s. So the Civil War did still play out over slavery, and we were able to abolish it, yay! But it didn't happen until about 1905. I know, that's pretty embarrassing, America, come on. Transatlantic transportation is throughout the same in the 1800s, but we did develop airships a little bit sooner, in the sense that because there was less scientific innovation in one area, they went in another area. So transatlantic airship travel did actually develop before 1900. And that was pretty much a class split. So the upper class would only really be in the airships because it's really nice. And then the ocean liners, the dirty, stinky, coal ocean liners would be in the lower class. And then the evolution of worker and human rights slowed as alternative forms of labor were not as readily available. Like Mr. McCoy said, humans are very efficient. So unfortunately, it looks like as far as civil rights go, they were fairly consistently lagged for about 30 years behind our timeline. But there are some benefits, and we'll look at that soon. So basically, we're looking at a world with, if this isn't clear yet, with no proper use of electricity in any way, shape, or form. Lightning exists, static electricity is cool to play around with, but that's kind of it. At this point, there are no world wars due to the lack of instant communication and coordination between several nation teams at a time. But wars between one nation at a time still persisted at a similar rate and pace, although not as prevalent as it did in previous centuries, like the 100 Years' War or this and that war. People remained in cities because since consumerism never really took off, so people didn't basically spread out to the suburbs and live in gigantic, hyper-consumed lives. And so for Austin Dillon, you might want to live in the timeline, but you don't get air conditioning. Of course, the world became extremely steampunk-style. Engineers did come up with alternative ways to accomplish modern conveniences. And we'll go over that in a little bit. Coal was somewhat phased out, actually a little bit earlier, due to dense cities being concentrated with a lot of people. And so hydro dam power, wind, and geothermal were developed a little bit sooner than it would have otherwise. How do we do communication? So this will somewhat go a little bit into the 21st century still, but this pretty much runs all the way through the 1900s. So most informational tasks, of course, are done on mechanical machines similar to the printing press, and the printing press still exists fully, although that was developed into a much higher complex machine than the last time that it was used, right before computers were invented. Citywide telephone services basically were replaced with these pneumatic tube systems, for which case you would send basically a letter or a message through your tube. It would go to the operator, which is right here, and then of course there would be an identification number for its address, and then she send it through, and it goes whoop, and so that would be basically serve as your telephone line. And so you'd send a message out, and then maybe a few minutes later you get the message back for whoever you're talking to. Public information or screens were replaced with these mechanical flipboards that we saw at Meal Wolf over here. So I have the picture that I took right here. And so how you basically operate that is similar to how a music box works, where you have that cylinder thing with the little pegs, which basically indicates when the, I guess, little chime things are supposed to be struck. And so a similar board is basically being run underneath here to be able to present information at a fast rate throughout the city. You can create images or videos out of this as well. Rather fast transatlantic communication. This was still a big issue because we don't have any cables, we don't have any wires, we don't have any satellites or radio, right? And so we did discover the rocket because that can be done with like a match and solid or liquid fuel. And so basically what was developed is a system of communication and mail for those who are really, really wealthy, in which case there would be ports to transport an item or a message over to Europe in under an hour through launching a rocket with extremely specific weather conditions to basically be able to land in a launch zone right over here. And so it would do a similar hip-hoppity way right over here, it would pass over to Greenland, over to Iceland, over to Scotland, and then it would arrive in London. And then once everything is like within land, you can send it on the pneumatic tube system between the continents and the cities. And so basically whenever a rocket does land, you usually will send out about 5 or 6 at a time, because usually only about 1 or 2 or 3 actually make it to the landing zone because of unpredictable conditions. I think I covered everything about this rocket system here. All right, so energy and transportation. How does this work? Well, cars and trains are developed in a similar manner to the way that we did in our timeline, except for exclusively seemingly using steam and coal, right? Not exactly electric. So any form of batteries for any kind of mechanical devices that we use are replaced with gigantic sturdy metal springs that are wound up, and then basically whatever device that you're using, you put in the wound up spring in there, and that slowly makes the output that you desire. So that replaces your batteries. As for citywide energy usage, each city develops a rotational big energy source, and so you see it on this big wheel right here. And so what it outputs is a cable that basically has a super high level of tension and power. And so this will run all throughout the city. The cable, it runs underneath the streets. It runs basically into your house. And so whatever, if you want to use your energy for something, whether it be a fan, this is equivalent to your outlet power source, where basically you hook it up to where it's compatible and the cable will run on by, and you basically pick up its rotational energy. So usually this wheel is powered by something like a hydro dam power or something that's basically a consistent large amount of power at a certain time. And so for each district you would have like a power source of where the cable is, because it can only go so far from the center of the city. And the cable does run underneath the streets, and so whenever you have your car or whatever vehicle, you can just hook it up to right below, and then it'll carry you until you get onto the open road. And so for that way you're not spitting out coal into the streets. And of course trains pretty much throughout this instance are pretty much exactly the same. Of course they're more developed in this hypothetical timeline. And then 21st century and beyond. So as we know, in conclusion, the cities have become much more complex with needs for cultures to be a little bit more insulated in a bubble. Globalization doesn't really take off at all, in the sense that you can't exactly have instant communication for cultures to sort of meld into the same sort of form. Photography is technically possible with bright explosion flashes on copper sheets, so we do get photography, but that's a little bit more of like a luxury. And movies and rudimentary video games are possible now with the mechanical flip screen, so we do get movies through those, although they are somewhat black and white, and some colored flip screens do exist later on. And communication across the globe takes a couple of hours at the very fastest with the highest level of technology. And maybe one day, somebody, while tinkering in their garage, will discover an electropulse and that a signal can almost be sent instantly, as if that would really go anywhere. So I think that concludes, yep, that's the last slide. That concludes my briefing. Are there any questions?
So you talk about the implementation of pneumatic tubes to send packages. I have to ask, at the end of every pneumatic tube, is there multiple slaves either blowing or sucking air to move
So
packages.
either it's done with an independent power source or slaves to to blow. But no, how it does work is you have a gigantic weight for which kind of like a piston with an airtight tank at the end, and so that piston basically moves up to create a pressure differential. And that's how the pneumatic tubes do work. Does that make sense? I mean, that's kind of
Gotcha.
how they're
Yep.
supposed to work. Yeah, all those
It's gonna be like the later
beautiful
ones.
AI
Or
Can we go back to the
imagery.
towards the
timeline
end.
picture?
The what? The
The
timeline.
timeline picture?
Yeah.
Okay, branch point 1795. I assume that's when this guy dies or isn't born.
Yeah, basically he
Oh,
dies then.
dies, yeah.
Yeah.
If you go all the way down, it's like the second to last one
I
with
love the
the big ass
fucking
train in the
baby
front.
picture with X's in its eyes.
What's up?
Okay, I would like to talk about how horrible this transportation system is because you have a train which is on a linear track, but then you also have cars that are also on linear tracks.
Yes.
So everybody, all the roads are tracks, and everybody owns their own mini train.
No, these cars are a bit of a luxury in the same sense that they were in like the 1910s. So people have the luxury to leave the city on a more like freelance basis if they want to go into the woods, and so those can be brought into the city. But similar to how trains do exist in our current society in Europe, this is the main train that goes between parts of the city and to other cities as well. So it's a similar like shared
Okay.
transportation unit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got
The
you.
reason that these are the reason that these are rails is because the underground cable is currently running and pulling these cars along.
Oh, okay,
So
sneaky.
that's why they have to be on like a certain like specifically straight line.
Okay, and also since there's no electricity, I see all those street lamps. I imagine
Those are
that means
all
that
oil-
some man
all
has
oil
to go up
lamps
there on
or
a little
fires.
ladder.
Yeah, they're all oil lamps
Huh?
or fires. Every single
Okay.
like that's how it was, and like all of these are
Yeah,
oil
that's true.
lamps.
You ever seen Mary Poppins, Austin? They like the oil lamps.
Yeah, that's a lot. Especially that dude, like that's his living room, and he's got what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
They're
11
desperate. They're
candles.
desperate for energy use. This is the newfangled thing.
Yeah, the newfangled thing.
Is energy use. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, you said
Very
they're
nice.
oil lanterns. You didn't really mention much about oil in this presentation.
No, it is sort of like used. I guess I didn't, but it is like used as an energy source, but similar to coal, it's sort of like avoided. It's used way out in the pastures, but is avoided in the bigger cities because of the pollution output that it does. So
Mhm.
it is like refined, like super, like it can be used as like a power source for the big wheel of each city, right?
I'll be honest,
So-
I don't really know much about getting like drilling for oil,
But you have
but would
to
that even be
refine it.
possible
You have
without
to
electricity?
I think it would be, but a bigger problem is that you have to refine it. So I think it's a lot harder to get your hands on for efficient energy use. It's almost as if you would spend a significant amount of more energy refining and getting it ready than you would actually using it, but I don't know if that's the case. Basically, it's not as easy to acquire given our technological limitations.
Sure. So what you're saying is the whaling industry could be
This is
quite
true.
large.
Yes. However, I am focusing specifically on American cities on the interior. Basically, any point where there's a waterfall or a river, that is prime real estate because we got to keep that water flowing for all the energy usage in the.
It's true. That makes sense.
Yep.
I think one
Okay.
issue that you
Oh.
might run into with the big wheels. Well, first of all, like how are those wheels being turned? Because if they're providing citywide rotational energy, that wheel will take like several dozen tons of weight
Yes.
to spin it at
Yes,
all.
that's why it's so big. So outside of this factory thing, the entire like gigantic like length of the river, of the gravity water is providing the energy for that wheel at all times. And so at times you can have citywide blackout outages if the water is low, and then you could also create an ordinance for less primary devices to be used. So similar to how
Yeah, I was-
in the real world we do like sort of regulate how much like energy outage is being used, but the short answer is that there is plenty to go around. Sometimes there's even multiple dams further down that basically provide that energy. This right here, this would be for a small town in short, but like
Yeah,
each city
yeah.
would have multiple of these like energy generating factories.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, my next question was going to be, what are those wheels made out of? Because I have a feeling that they would break with the amount of
we have
force
metal,
being applied
and
to them.
according to the picture, it is wood. But of course, we have a lot of highly skilled labor. I mean, that's what wheels were basically made of it back in the Middle Ages. And so
Yeah.
this a lot. So this one in particular is made out of wood. However, the dam itself would likely be of metal.
Whenever the wheels stop turning, I imagine they wouldn't call that a blackout because everything's powered by candles. So maybe they'd call it a slow out.
It would be a slow out, yes.
A spin out.
Okay.
It would be a spin out if they just stopped because like the water
A
level's too low.
spin out.
If
Yeah,
the
there we
river
go.
water, if
Yeah.
it was too low, they would be like a spin out. Like, hey guys,
Or like
stop.
the central axle broke or something.
Well, okay, so like in bigger cities, you would have redundant factories, and then we'd go down in a level of energy usage.
Okay, my next question is, since there's no world wars and Karl Marx wrote about communism before Faraday, I'm assuming that means that the USSR still exists, but no USA to take it down. So does this mean that we have the end of capitalism in sight, or no?
I
we
would
still wait for another
imagine, because
timeline?
it was originally Russia, that the original Russia still exists. There would likely still be a higher level of workers' rights because a lot more manual labor is being used in this society. So I can't speak on that for sociological changes. However, I think that laws being passed in favor of specific worker rights are more likely. Capitalism ending, I'm not so sure. Certain social programs and workers' rights,
Damn.
I imagine so, yes. So I have to meet you halfway with that one.
Oh,
No
okay,
further
okay.
questions.
My
So,
puberty voice went away.
so
Awesome.
police officers
Yes.
with yeah. Congrats on exiting puberty. So police officers have tasers, which are obviously powered by electricity. So I imagine
Yes.
that they just have a really fast gyroscope on them at all times that they can just like go and like hit somebody with the really fast spinning wheel to
Yes,
to
but
like
they have
stun
to.
them.
Yes, they do have to wind that thing up and get it going for
Oh
a
yeah.
second. Yes. So
Great taser. Okay.
I am, however,
Love it.
not in charge of the law enforcement department, so I'm not familiar exactly with what they use.
All right, Brian. I think it's
Um,
grading time. Unless anybody else has questions.
I think it's grading time too. I don't
All right,
know if I have any other specific questions on this one.
let's go. What's this? Group chats. I need to make some memes about your guys' presentations. Thanks for watching. Go ahead and give us ideas on what we should do next.